Hello ladies and gentlemen, the lovers of UnboundVerse. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you've been having great fun with all the videos and the shorts and the long videos produced in this UnboundVerse channel. Alright, today I have something to share with you. Something that is detailed. Alright, it's a detailed narrative that weaves together the symbolism and interpretations from dreams into a compelling story. This story is designed to be immersive and thought-provoking, and it's going to expand on the elements of dreams to explore deeper themes. This dream is coming straight to you from the dreamland, and it's being transported to you by Hakeem Ajibose on the UnboundVerse channel. Of course, you know how we do here on the UnboundVerse. If you've been with us, we go straight to the story, but for the sake of those who are watching this channel for the very first time, please click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you will get stories and videos of this type when they are released and published on UnboundVerse channel. Alright, you already know. Let's get to it. Let's go. This is titled The Unseen Ledger. Part 1 is the call to judgment. In a sprawling city where towering glass buildings cast long shadows over the streets, a subtle hum of anticipation filled the air. The people of the city had been summoned to a grand and enigmatic building, an imposing structure made of dark stone that loomed over the surrounding landscape. The building was known simply as the Forum, a place where judgments were made, futures were decided, and destinies were either granted or denied. Within the Forum, the atmosphere was thick with tension. A large room, dimly lit by a few flickering overhead lights, served as the waiting area for the applicants. Each person in the room had been waiting for this day for what felt like an eternity. They had all come here with a singular purpose: to receive the judgment and possibly earn a place within the city's most elite ranks. For some, it was the police force. For others, a prestigious job. But for all, it was an opportunity that seemed both inevitable and daunting. Among the sea of faces stood a man, a quiet observer amidst the anxious murmurs of the crowd. He was unremarkable in appearance, average height, average build, but his eyes, they held a depth that suggested he had seen more than most. He was dressed in a simple suit, his trousers slightly loose around his legs, a detail he hadn't noticed until now. Around him, the other applicants clutched their records, thick, old files that contained their entire history. The records were worn and frayed, the edges yellowed with age, but in the middle of each one, there was a pristine, crisp sheet of paper. This new sheet was the key to the future, to their future, the reason they had all come here today. The man's thoughts were interrupted by a low voice, authoritative yet indistinct. The inspector had arrived, a figure shrouded in shadows, neither distinctly male nor female, an embodiment of the city's judgmental authority. The inspector began to speak, announcing the start of the evaluations. One by one, the applicants were called forward. The disqualification. The inspector moved with deliberate precision, examining each applicant's appearance. The focus was strange, almost absurd. Trousers. The inspector scrutinized the fit of each person's trousers, the way they hung on their bodies, the way they either comforted or conformed to, deviated from an unspoken standard. Not slim fit, the inspector would mutter, disqualifying applicants after applicants. The man watched as one by one people were turned away, their hopes dashed by something as trivial as the fit of their trousers. Yet there was no outcry, no protest. Instead, a strange relief washed over the room. The disqualified applicants were handed their old records, and rather than despair, they seemed pleased, almost eager to reclaim their pasts. When the man's name was called, he stepped forward, his heart steady, his mind strangely calm. The inspector's gaze fell on his trousers, lingering for a moment before the inevitable verdict was given. No slim fit. He was disqualified. just like the others. But instead of feeling disappointment, he felt a peculiar sense of satisfaction, as if a burden had been lifted from his trousers. The inspector handed him his record, and he took it without hesitation. The man's mind was abuzz with curiosity. What was this strange attachment to the past? Why did none of them truly desire the job they had all ostensibly come for? The discovery. As he moved away from the inspector's desk, his old record clutched tightly in his hands. The man felt a presence beside him. It was his old friend from secondary school, a tall, lanky figure who had always seemed to know more than he let on. The friend's eyes were locked onto the man's record, a burning curiosity evident in his gaze. "What's inside?" his friend asked, a note of urgency in his voice. The man hesitated, unsure of what he would find, but his friend's persistence was unyielding. Together, they moved to a quieter corner of the forum, away from the prying eyes of the other applicants. With a deep breath, the man opened his record. The first few pages were familiar, filled with old documents, letters, and notes that chronicled his past. But then, as he flipped further, something unexpected caught his eyes. A thick stack of cash hidden among the pages. The sight of it sent a jolt of shock through him. This wasn't supposed to be here. How did it gotten into this record? His friend's eyes widened, a knowing smile creeping across his face. "I knew it," he whispered, barely able to contain his excitement. "You've hit the jackpot!" The man quickly closed his record, his heart pounding. This was not what he had expected. The cash felt like a secret, something dangerous, something that could change everything. His friend's insistence grew stronger, a silent pressure to share in his unexpected windfall. But as they stood there, a sudden commotion drew their attention. A police officer who had been standing silently near the entrance began to speak in a low, gravelly voice. He spoke of corruption, of the darkness that had seeped into the very heart of the city's institutions. He told of 2 female officers who had been wronged, their cries for justice unheard, their suffering ignored. And then he spoke of the higher-ups, those who were meant to lead, but were instead embroiled in their own scandals, their own corrupt dealings. The man felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The cash in his record, the corruption within the police force. Was there a connection? Was this money tainted? A product of the same corruption that the officer spoke of? The moral dilemma. As the police officer's words echoed in the man's mind, he found himself grappling with a moral dilemma. The cash in his record represented more than just money. It was a symbol of the hidden, the unspoken, the corrupt undercurrent that ran through the city's veins. The man's friend, still eager to share in the windfall, seemed oblivious to the moral weight of the situation. The man stood at a crossroads, the record in his hands feeling heavier than ever before. What should he do? The cash was an opportunity, a chance to break free from the constraints of his life, to escape the suffocating expectations of the city. But at what cost? Was this money truly his to take, or was it a trap, a test of his integrity? He glanced at his friend, who now seemed more desperate than ever, his eyes fixed on the record. The man could sense the growing tension between them, a tension born of greed, of fear, of the unspoken understanding that this money could change everything, for better or worse. The revelation. As the man wrestled with his thoughts, the forum seemed to fade around him. Dimly lit room, the murmuring crowd, the shadowy inspector, they all became distant, like echoes from another world. In that moment, the man realized something profound. The interview, disqualification, the cash, none of it was about the job or the money. It was about choice, about the path we take and the consequences we face. The cash was a temptation, a test of character. The disqualification from the job was a blessing in disguise, freeing him from a system that was deeply flawed, corrupt, and morally bankrupt. The old record, with its frayed edges and worn pages, was a reminder of where he had come from, the experiences that had shaped him, and the values that defined him. But the new sheet of paper in the middle of the record, that was the future, blank and unwritten, waiting for him to decide what to do with it. The man looked at his friend one last time, a sad smile playing on his lips. He knew now what he had to do. With a firm resolve, he closed the record and handed it back to his friend. "Keep it," he said softly, his voice steady. "It's not mine to take." His friend stared at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend the decision. But the man felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, a sense of clarity and peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. He turned away from the farm, leaving behind the records, the cash, and the corruption. He walked out into the city, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon, the cool morning air filling his lungs. The new beginning. As he walked through the quiet streets, the man felt a sense of freedom he hadn't known before. The city, with all its shadows and secrets, seemed less imposing now, less daunting. He had made his choice, and in doing so, he had reclaimed his power, his integrity, his future. He knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The world was still full of challenges, of temptations, of moral dilemmas, but he was ready to face them with a clear mind and a steady heart. The man knew that he could create his own destiny, write his own story, fill the blank page with his own words, his own truth. As the sun rose higher in the sky, bathing the city in golden light, the man smiled. He had passed the real test, the one that mattered, and now he was ready to begin anew. All right. So if you're wondering what you have just listened to, you've just listened to a story that expands on the themes from a dream, weaving together elements of self-discovery, moral choice, and the struggle against societal corruption into a narrative that emphasizes the importance of integrity and self-determination. Here is how the story continues and concludes. Stay tuned. The path of integrity. The man walked through the awakening city, the morning light casting long shadows behind him. With each step, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, as if the weight of the past had been lifted, and the future was his to shape. The forum, with its dark judgment and corrupt temptations, was behind him now, both literally and metaphorically. He had chosen a path of integrity, and though it was a path less traveled, it was one that resonated with his true self. As he wandered through the city street, the man began to notice things he had overlooked before. The people moving around him, their faces marked by the same sense of weariness and expectations he had once felt, seemed trapped in their own struggles, their own quest for approval and validation. Yet, beneath the surface, he could see flashes of potential, glimpses of unspoken dreams and hidden strengths. It dawned on him that the disqualification he had faced at the forum was not just a personal release, but also a message, an invitation to break free from the constraints that bound so many others. The city was a place of immense potential, but it was also a place where many were ensnared by the trapping of power, status, and material wealth. The man realized that his journey had only just begun, and that his next step was a help others seize what he had seen, to guide them towards their own realizations, their own path of integrity. The man realized that his journey had only just begun, and that his next step was to help others see what he had seen, to guide them towards their own realization, towards their own path of integrity. The gathering. Over the following weeks, the man began to reach out to those around him. He spoke to people in the streets, in cafes, in the quiet corners of the city, where the noise of daily life faded away and conversations could unfold naturally. He shared his story, not as a sermon, but as personal experience, a revelation that had changed his life. He spoke of the forum, of the disqualification of the cash he had found and the moral choice he had made. He spoke of the need to look beyond the superficial to find the true value within oneself and to resist the corrupting influences that pervaded the city. People listened. Some were skeptical, others intrigued, but a few, a growing number, found resonance in his words. They too had felt the weight of expectations, the subtle pull of corruption, and the disillusionment that came with it. Slowly, a small group began to form around the man, a gathering of like-minded individuals who sought something more meaningful, more authentic than what the city's institutions offered. This group became known as the Seekers. They met in secret, not out of fear, but out of a desire to build something genuine, away from the prying eyes of the corrupt and the complacent. Together, they shared their experiences, their hopes, and their dreams. They supported each other, offering guidance and wisdom drawn from their own lives. The man found himself at the center of this movement, not as a leader in the traditional sense, but as a catalyst, a spark that had ignited a flame of change, confrontation, and resolution. As the seekers grew in number and influence, they inevitably attracted attention. The city's elites, the very ones who had thrived in the shadows of corruption, began to take notice. They saw the seekers as a threat, a challenge to their authority and the status quo. Rumors began to spread, whispers of dissent, of rebellion, of a new force rising within the city that could not be easily controlled. One day, the man received an invitation. It was from the very inspector who had disqualified him at the forum. The message was cryptic, but the meaning was clear. He was being summoned to a final confrontation, a test of his resolve, his integrity. The man knew that this was a pivotal moment, not just for himself, but for the seekers and the city as a whole. He accepted the invitation, prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The meeting took place in a grand hall, far more opulent than the austere forum where the disqualifications had occurred. The inspectors was there, seated at the head of a long table, flanked by other figures of power, business leaders, high-ranking officials, the hidden rulers of the city. They looked at the man with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, as if he were a puzzle they could not quite solve. The inspector spoke first, their voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of menace. They praised the man for his wisdom, his ability to see through the superficial, to reject the corrupt temptation of the cash in his record. But their words were not sincere. They were testing him, probing for weakness. "You have shown great strength," the inspector said, their eyes narrowing. "But strength is only valuable if it serves a purpose. Join us, and you can use that strength to shape the city in ways you never imagined. Refuse, and you will find that the city can be a very unforgiving place." The man listened, his mind clear, his heart resolute. He knew that this was not just a choice between power and integrity. It was a choice between continuing on the path of truth or succumbing to the very corruption he had sworn to oppose. The city's elites were offering him everything he had once thought he wanted: power, influence, a seat at the table. But he could see now that these were empty promises, mere illusions that would only bind him to the very system he had come to despise. He stood up, his voice steady and firm. "I am not here to shape the city in your image. I am here to help it find its own truth, to help its people see what you have tried so hard to hide. The seeker will not be silenced, and neither will I." The room fell silent. The elites exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond to such a clear and unequivocal rejection. The inspector's face remained impassive, but there was a flicker of something in their eyes. Respect, perhaps, or acknowledgement that they had underestimated the man. "You've made your choice," the inspector said finally, their voice devoid of emotion. "I hope you are prepared to face the consequences." The man smiled, a genuine smile that came from a place of deep conviction. "I am," and so is the city a new dawn. The man left the grand hall, the weight of the confrontation still fresh in his mind, but his spirit unbroken. He returned to the seekers, sharing with them what had transpired. Together, they resolved to continue their work, to spread their message of integrity, truth, and self-discovery. The city was changing, slowly but surely. The influence of the seekers began to permeate its streets, its institutions, its people. Corruption, once hidden in the shadows, was being brought into the light. The city's elites, though still powerful, found themselves increasingly isolated, their authority challenged by a populace that was awakening to its own potential. And the man, though still a quiet observer in many ways, had become a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the power of one individual to inspire change. He continued to walk the streets of the city, meeting with those who sought him out, offering guidance and support. He knew that the journey was far from over, that there were still battles to be fought, choices to be made, paths to be walked. But he also knew that he was not alone. The seekers were with him, and together they were forging a new future, one that was not dictated by the corrupt, but by the people themselves. As the sun set over the city, casting a warm golden light over the buildings and streets, the man looked out at the horizon. The city was still full of shadows, still full of secrets, but it was also full of possibilities, of hope, of the promise of a new dawn. And in that moment, the man knew that they were on the right path, the path of integrity, of truth, of self-discovery, the path that would lead them and the city to a brighter future. Alright, if you're just wondering what you just watched just now, you just watched a beautiful story that was made from a real life dream, right? So the next thing we're gonna do right now is to do the epilogue of this story. Let's get it. Epilogue of the unseen ledger. The man's old record, now safely tucked away, had become a relic of the past, a symbol of the journey he had undertaken. He had never needed to open it again, for he had found what truly mattered, not in the pages of the record, but in the choice he made, the path he chose to walk. The new sheet of paper in the middle of the record remained blank, untouched. It was a reminder that the future was his to write, a canvas waiting for the strokes of his own decisions, his own truth. And so, as the man continued his journey, he carried with him the knowledge that true power did not come from the records of the past or the promises of the corrupt, but from within, from the integrity of one's soul, the courage to make the right choices, and the unwavering belief that if a better future was always possible. And in that belief, he found his true purpose, his true path, the path of the unseen ledger, where the most important records were not those written in books, but those etched in the heart. So this story, spanning across 50 minutes of watching or viewing, delves deep into the themes of moral integrity, the fight against corruption, and the journey of self-discovery. It explores the challenges of staying true to oneself in a world that often rewards the opposite, and ultimately it is a story of hope, resilience, and the power of individual choice in shaping not just one's own life, but the world around them. I hope you have grasped one or two things from sharing this video with you, and I would like for you to do the same. Share this video with others and let them learn one or two things, let them grasp one or two things from this video, and let them know that the future is theirs to write. As you know how we always do on UnboundVerse. See you in another video. Bye for now.